Welcome back to the Gracefield Classroom. I'm so glad you're here for episode 4. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the community. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite platform so you don't miss a future episode. And if you've been following along since episode 1, it means so much that you're here, growing and learning alongside me as we unpack how to support all kinds of learners with grace, intention, and practical tools. Last week's episode was all about putting learning styles into action, and I shared some real-life strategies you can use to support learners at any age or stage. If you haven't listened yet, definitely go check that one out after this. I'll be diving deeper into that topic and sharing even more examples in upcoming episodes. But today, we're switching gears just a bit. We're talking about busting the myths around learning styles. Yep, we're going there. You've probably heard some pushback around learning styles. Maybe someone told you they're outdated, or not supported by research, or that people are using them all wrong. And honestly, there's some truth in those concerns, but there's also a lot of misunderstanding. So let's clear some things up. Before we dive into the specific myths, let's take a moment to reframe our thinking. The goal here isn't to throw learning styles out the window. It's to peel back the layers and get to what's actually helpful and true. When we do that, we can approach this topic with both wisdom and grace. So with that foundation laid, let's walk through some of the most common myths that often get in the way of using learning styles well. And we'll explore what's actually going on beneath the surface. Myth number 1. You are only one learning style. This one comes up a lot. People take a quiz and label themselves. I'm a visual learner, or I'm totally kinesthetic. And while those preferences might feel true, we are never just one style. The truth is, all of us learn in different ways depending on the task, the environment, or even our mood. Maybe you prefer visual input for directions, but auditory explanations for emotional topics. Maybe you need to write something down to really remember it, or move your body when you're trying to focus. The truth is, we're dynamic learners. Our brains are incredibly adaptable. And while it's helpful to understand what feels most natural, it's equally important to be aware of how different situations can shift our preferences. A child might be kinesthetic in math, but highly verbal during read-alouds. An adult might process best through writing at work, but visually when learning a new hobby. When we over-identify with one label, we risk closing the door to other learning opportunities. Instead of saying, I can't learn this way, could we ask, how else could I engage with this? So yes, you might have a preference, but we all benefit from multimodal learning, and that's where the real magic happens, what I like to call multimodal magic. When we include all 4 styles, visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic, into our lessons or presentations, we create experiences that engage the whole learner. It's not just more inclusive, it's more powerful. And that's why I always say, it's not about fitting learners into a box. It's about expanding what's possible for them. When we let go of limiting labels and embrace that flexible, multimodal approach, we open the door to real transformation. But then comes the pushback, often from research circles, that says learning styles just don't work. So let's talk about that. We're going to break down myth number 2. Learning styles aren't backed by science, so we shouldn't use them. This one usually comes from academic research or well-meaning educators. And here's the thing. It's true that there's limited research showing that matching instruction exactly to a student's learning style leads to better test scores. But that's not really the point, is it? Because here's something else to consider. Most traditional testing environments are built around just 1 or 2 learning styles, usually reading, writing, and some auditory instruction. If you happen to thrive in those formats, great. But if you're a visual or kinesthetic learner, tests might not capture your understanding accurately at all. That means test scores, especially standardized ones, aren't always a true reflection of what someone knows or how they process. There are so many other factors at play: test anxiety, processing time, lack of multimodal instruction leading up to the test, and even the rigidity of the test format itself. So, if research is based solely on whether matching instruction to a learning style improves test performance, we're already working with a limited and often biased tool for measurement. What is backed by research is that multimodal instruction works, that giving learners multiple ways to access content improves comprehension and engagement, that providing options for students to express what they know helps them feel more confident and capable. So yes, we want to avoid oversimplified labels, but we never want to ignore how people actually connect with content. That student who constantly interrupts with questions, they might be verbally processing and making meaning in real time. The one who's fidgeting or walking around, maybe they need movement to help them focus. And the learner who's doodling instead of making eye contact, that doesn't mean they're not paying attention. It could be that drawing helps them absorb and process information. We can't always judge engagement by stillness or eye contact. People process differently, and when we recognize those cues, we can respond with more grace and intention. And if we're honest, the reason many of us believe in learning styles isn't just theory, it's lived experience, right? We've seen what happens when a struggling learner suddenly lights up because something finally made sense. Think back to a student or learner you've worked with who just wasn't getting it until you shifted something. Maybe you added a visual, gave them a hands-on task, or let them talk it through out loud. That moment they finally understood, that was a clue to their learning preference. Maybe it meant cutting that overwhelming math worksheet in half and bringing out some base 10 blocks or coins. Maybe it meant letting them build it, draw it, or physically move to understand it. Those aren't just modifications, they're invitations to deeper understanding through the style that fits them best. Those little breakthroughs are evidence that how we teach matters and that different people truly do learn in different ways. There's also a danger in using research as the only measuring stick. Yes, research is powerful, but it can't always capture the nuance of human connection, creativity, or curiosity. Not everything that works can be measured in a study. Sometimes what transforms a learner isn't quantifiable, it's personal. And let's not forget, just because something hasn't been measured well yet doesn't mean it isn't valuable. Learning styles may not boost test scores in a tightly controlled setting, but they can absolutely boost understanding, engagement, and confidence, and that's worth paying attention to. So let's use research wisely, but not rigidly. Let's pair data with discernment and always consider the individual in front of us. And here's another common misconception, one that I hear all the time, that learning styles are only something we think about in school settings. But the truth is they show up everywhere. We've seen what happens when a struggling learner suddenly lights up because something finally made sense. Let's dive into myth number 3. Learning styles are only for school-aged kids. False, false, and false again. Learning styles matter at every stage and in every setting. And if you listen to episode 3, you know I'm very passionate about this. Understanding how people learn doesn't stop at graduation. It applies to parenting, leadership, ministry, and adult professional development. I've had conversations with managers who realized their employee wasn't underperforming, they just needed the training material in a different format. I've coached parents who finally understood why their child wasn't responding to the same discipline or instruction style as their sibling. Learning styles are not a classroom-only concept. They're a people concept. Think about this. Have you ever tried to assemble furniture with just written instructions and felt totally lost until you found a video tutorial? That's a learning style at work. Or maybe you've tried to follow a podcast about a complex topic and thought, I really need to see this drawn out. That's a learning preference too. We're all constantly learning, whether it's at work, at church, in parenting, or even trying a new hobby. And we bring our unique learning style into all of it. I've seen this play out in faith settings. Some people learn best through listening to sermons. Others engage deeply with scripture through journaling or art. Some grow by doing, serving, building, moving. When we understand learning styles, we don't just improve performance. We strengthen connection, discipleship, and transformation. When companies or ministries begin to present information in different ways, visual charts, discussion-based workshops, hands-on labs, the results are often powerful. People feel seen, they remember more, and they stay engaged. I recently visited a new church where the pastor was speaking on the fruit of the Spirit. And not only were the words up on the screen in beautifully designed slides, but he also gave us a printed study guide to take home. And let me tell you, this was so helpful to me. I was hearing it, seeing it, and now I could read and study it on my own. The guide even included real-life examples of what each fruit of the Spirit looks like in action. That's multimodal learning in a faith setting. And it made the message land in a much deeper, more practical way for me, because now I had something tangible to reinforce and refer to at home. And let's pause for a second to talk about what was actually in that study guide, because it wasn't just a recap. The pastor went through the fruit of the Spirit, and he didn't just list them, he defined them in real-life terms. For example, patience wasn't described as just quietly waiting in line. It was framed as offering grace to others in hard moments, not rushing someone who needs more time, not snapping at someone when you're feeling pressed. That kind of tangible breakdown helped me see how each fruit could be lived out in daily situations. And that's what teaching with intention does. It turns abstract ideas into something more memorable and actionable. And as someone who's coached teachers, parents, and leaders, I found that once they understand learning styles, everything changes. Not just how they teach, but how they listen, guide, and support others. As we continue unpacking these common misconceptions, there are still a few more we need to address. And the next one often flies under the radar, even though it affects how we teach every day. Myth number 4. We should teach the way that works best for us. This one is subtle, but it is everywhere. Whether you're a teacher, homeschool parent, ministry leader, or corporate trainer, it's easy to default to the style you are most comfortable with. And honestly, sometimes it's just what we know. Maybe no one ever taught us how to present information in a variety of ways. Or maybe it just feels natural to do what works for us. There's no judgment here. But here's the truth. When we're teaching, leading, or serving, it's not about us, it's about them. If you're an auditory learner, you might lean into long explanations. If you're visual, you might rely heavily on slides. If you're hands-on, you may default to activities and movement. But when we only teach in our comfort zone, we risk missing the learners in front of us. Stretching into other styles takes intention, but when we do, we're not just covering content, we're creating connection, inclusion, and impact. Imagine this: sitting through an entire workshop, training, or class where the speaker only teaches in their preferred style. Maybe talking for long stretches without visuals or hands-on examples. You might feel frustrated, disconnected, or like you're the problem, when really the presentation just isn't meeting your learning needs. This happens to students and adults more often than we realize. In fact, I was just talking with a group of teachers recently about professional development, several of them that had just sat through hours of lectures. No discussion, no movement, no interaction. And guess how they felt when they left? Not energized, not inspired. And I know this isn't how we want people to feel, but it's happening. Many walked away feeling inadequate or incapable, not because they weren't capable of learning, but because they didn't have the time or space to process. The information just wasn't presented in a way that worked for them. And this is so common. And it's a clear reminder that adults need varied learning experiences too, just like our students. We thrive when our learning environment honors different styles. That's why using all 4 styles, visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic, isn't just a nice to have, it's truly essential. When we build in visuals, give time to process aloud, include written materials, and offer interactive elements. We're not just teaching, we're reaching. And when we stretch beyond our default, we're demonstrating care, flexibility, and a true desire to serve. We're saying to our learners, I see you, you matter, and I'll meet you right where you are. And here's something else to consider. If everyone knew their learning styles, really knew them, they could speak about them openly and with self-awareness. Imagine an educator or leader saying, I know I'm very visual or auditory, but I also know not everyone is. So please offer me grace as I do my best to meet you where you are, and I welcome your feedback so I can continue learning how to present in ways that work for all of us. That kind of transparency builds trust, connection, and collaboration in any learning space. So yes, you have a natural style, but teaching isn't about expressing that, it's about reaching others. And that's a shift worth making. And finally, let's address one last myth. One that can have a lasting impact on a learner's confidence and self-worth, especially when misunderstood or left unchecked. Myth number 5. If a learner struggles, it means they're not trying hard enough. This one breaks my heart because I've seen the damage it can do. When someone isn't getting it, it's easy to assume they're not paying attention, not motivated, or just not trying. But more often than not, it's not a matter of effort. It's a matter of access. If we're only presenting material in one way, especially in a way that doesn't align with their learning style, we're making the content harder to reach. And that struggle, that resistance, it might be frustration, not laziness. I've worked with plenty of kids who were labeled defiant or distracted. But when I shifted how I presented the information, gave them something to touch or see or move with, they transformed before my eyes. It wasn't that they weren't trying, it was that they needed to be reached differently. And learning isn't about compliance, it's about connection. And that connection starts with how we welcome learners into our spaces. At the beginning of the school year, or any new season, it's so important to prioritize building relationships and community before diving headfirst into curriculum or testing. Creating a safe, supportive environment opens the door to real learning. When we rush into content without seeing and knowing our learners, we miss the opportunity to meet their deeper needs. And when someone struggles, it's a sign to pause, not push harder. Sometimes the learner who looks distracted, the one who's doodling, pacing, or avoiding eye contact, isn't checked out. They're just processing differently. And when we assume those behaviors mean they're not trying, we risk missing what's really going on. When we remove the myths and assumptions, we're left with something much richer, an opportunity to teach, lead, and serve in a way that honors how God uniquely wired each and every one of us to learn. So let's recap the 5 myths we just busted and replace them with truth. Myth number 1, you're only one learning style. The truth? We are dynamic learners who benefit from different styles in different contexts. Multimodal learning supports growth for all. Myth number 2, learning styles aren't backed by science, so we shouldn't use them. Truth? While test score data may be mixed, multimodal teaching enhances understanding, confidence, and engagement. Myth number 3, learning styles are only for school-aged kids. Truth, learning styles apply to every stage of life, from parenting to professional development to spiritual growth. Myth number 4, we should teach the way that works best for us. The truth is, effective parenting is about reaching others, not expressing our own style. Flexibility shows care and intention. Myth number 5, if a learner struggles, it means they're not trying hard enough. The truth is, struggle often signals a mismatch in how content is delivered. It's not about effort, it's about access. Each one carries assumptions that limit growth, but with intention and grace, we can replace those myths with truth. So what's true and helpful? Learning styles aren't about locking someone into a label. They're about unlocking potential. They give us insight, not identity, and when we use them wisely, they become tools for empathy, inclusion, and connection. Learning styles are a starting point, not the whole story. They help us ask better questions, offer more options, and create environments where everyone feels capable of learning and growing. Instead of assuming one size fits all, learning styles remind us to ask, how does this learner take in information best? What kind of support helps them thrive? When we take the time to notice and respond, we're not just improving outcomes, we're honoring the way someone was designed. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about style, it's about people. When we recognize how someone best takes in and processes information, we can build their confidence, increase their engagement, and create deeper, more meaningful learning moments. And as believers, we can take this one step further. Jesus himself was a multimodal teacher. He told stories, he asked questions, he used object lessons, he healed with touch, he wrote in the dirt, he reached people in the way they needed to be reached. What a model for us. Jesus didn't wait for people to come to him ready to learn. He met them in their context, spoke their language, and used whatever tools he had. Stories, questions, parables, objects, actions. If we want to teach and lead like Jesus, we'll do the same. This week I want you to observe one person in your life, a student, a coworker, your own child, and pay attention to how they learn. Do they light up when something is shown visually? Do they remember what they hear? Do they need to try it with their hands? Then just make one small adjustment in how you support them, just one. Maybe you give them the chance to talk it through instead of just handing them a handout. Maybe you bring out manipulatives or visuals. Maybe you let them move while listening. It doesn't have to be fancy, just intentional. And while you're doing that, reflect on your own learning style too. What helps you process and retain information? Have you been relying on your preferred method when teaching or leading others? Finally, invite some feedback. Whether you're in a classroom, on a team, or around your dinner table, just ask. Did that explanation make sense? Would a visual help? Would you like to try it a different way? That openness models humility and care, and it creates a ripple effect. And if you're feeling bold, send me a message and tell me how it went. And here's a final reflection to carry with you. What's one myth I've believed, and how might releasing it change the way I teach, lead, or connect? If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it, subscribing, and leaving a review. Your encouragement and feedback help me keep showing up, learning alongside you, and getting better each week. Thanks for being here, friends. Until next time, may God guide you with wisdom and fill your days with peace. I'll see you next time in the grace-filled classroom.